welcome to the last chapel of the term. It will be another few weeks before we get together in this sort of setting. Actually, during interim, we have informal chapel meditation time from 12:30 to 12:50, and it will not be here. It will be in the Century Room, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so we want you to be aware of that. But then back to these types of chapels in February, and we're back to second term. I want to again remind you of the fact that John Tomlinson's father died, and he is back in Antigua, or whatever island it is that he lives, for the burial. We begin our worship this morning in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you to the choir, the Augsburg choir, and their director, Tom Ross. They have had a very busy couple of weeks, and we very much appreciate your presence here today. This week, we have followed with great interest the talks between Reagan and Gorbachev. The realities of this tiny globe become more and more evident when things like this happen. Particularly in this season, as Paul Homer suggested last week in chapel, certain things are happening in our heart that allow us to think warm thoughts and have warm, fuzzy feelings going on. And it all focuses in on the fact that we are celebrating life, because we are focusing on the fact that Jesus Christ did come to this world to bring us new life, and on Calvary gave us eternal life. In Bethlehem, we focus today. One of the wonderful things about the Christmas season is we do think about life probably more than any other time of the year. And the music reflects that. The word carol is derived from the terms Kyrie eleison, Kyria eleison, Kyriale, Cariola, or Carol. This type of music emerged in the 14th century when people were getting away from the rigid forms of medieval worship. Some references were made to that last night at the dinner in terms of rigidity. They were originally ring dances, and thus the formation this morning. So if any of you feel like doing a ring dance, you can hop in the middle. While the dance was in progress, the tunes and the words were made up by bystanders along. Again, if you feel like making up words, I guess you can do that. The stories were usually about the life of Christ, about Mary, or even about the donkeys. These were sung on the outside, never in the church. Now these religious folk songs were the forerunners of the hymn singing, the vernacular that burst forth with Martin Luther and the Reformation. As many of you know, many of the songs were brought in from the bar to the church at that time with different words. The tunes were the bar tunes. Whenever we sing a Christmas carol or hymn, we are praising God for God's greatness and love. We sing praise to God for forgiveness, for life, and especially for the gift of Jesus Christ to us.
In those days, the decree went out from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be enrolled. This was the first enrollment when Quirinius was governor of Syria, and all went to be enrolled, each to his own city. And Joseph also went up from Galilee, from the city of Nazareth to Judea, to the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and lineage of David, to be enrolled with Mary, his betrothed, who was with child.
The little town of Bethlehem is out of the carol tradition, but it was written a few centuries later in America. In 1865, Philip Brooks went on a trip to the Holy Land from Philadelphia, where he was rector of Holy Trinity Episcopal Church. On the day before Christmas, he went from Jerusalem to Bethlehem and spent some time in the field where the shepherds had been. On Christmas Eve, he attended Mass in the Church of the Nativity, where tradition says that Christ was born. 3 years later, at Christmas time, he expressed his feelings about that experience in a poem. He had children on his mind as he wrote that poem. He approached the organist, Louis Redner, to write the music. Thus, if you look in the hymn book today, you'll see the tune is known as St. Louis, actually a different spelling, like city. Louis Redner spelled it differently. And this was an attempt to honor this man. As we sing O Little Town of Bethlehem, we think of the prophecy concerning the Messiah. O little town of Bethlehem, you may be just a small village in Judea, but out of you shall come the mighty one, who shall rule my people Israel.
And she gave birth to her firstborn son, and wrapped him in swaddling clothes, and laid him in a manger, because there was no place for them in the inn.
Our next carol is a familiar Away in the Manger. Though many think that Martin Luther wrote it, it actually is not the case. It possibly got the connection because it may have been written on the anniversary of Luther's birth. It seems to have some connection to an English tune picked up by a group of German Lutherans who settled in Pennsylvania. Because these people were of the German background, the tune was translated into German. It was not known to the people of Germany, however. It has been most popular in the United States and England. The stanzas reflect the emphasis of St. Francis of Assisi in in 1223 to humanize and vitalize the Christmas story through dramatization. Away in the manger.
And in that region there were shepherds out in their field, keeping watch over their flock by night. And an angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were filled with fear. And the angel said to them, "Be not afraid, for behold, I bring you good news of great joy, which will come to all the people. For to you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, who is Christ the Lord. And this will be a sign for you. You will find a babe wrapped in swaddling clothes and lying in a manger."
If anybody is without a program, just raise your hand and I'm sure others will share. Now we come to the first Noel, which appeared first in 1823. The English people were well known for their ability to abbreviate. One example of this is the term goodbye. This came about by shortening "God be with you." Some feel that the word Noel came from the shortening of the term "now is all well" to "now well" to "know well." Others say the word Noel is the Old English form of the French Noel, which was derived from Natal, which is the corruption of the Latin natalus, which means birth. Another interesting thing about carols is that they could be inaccurate historically. In this case, the shepherds were to have seen the star. Though the words may be somewhat confusing, the tune is infectious and is hard to get out of your mind. Noel, 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 born is the King of Israel. It becomes a vehicle for our joy at Christmas time.
And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of heavenly hosts praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace among men with whom he is pleased."
Angels We Have Heard on High is perhaps the best known of all the French carols. It appeared first in the early 1800s, but has been altered by Earl Morlot, who was inspired by Shakespeare, William Blake, and St. John. The choral refrain, Gloria in excelsis Deo, is possibly from a Latin chorale of the late medieval period. These words were thought to be the Latin version of what the angels sang on the night of the Nativity. Angels We Have Heard on High is also known as the Westminster Carol. This is probably because it was first sung in England by the Westminster Abbey Choir and was sung often by them. It brings to mind children's voices. It reminds us of an angelic choir on that starry night in Bethlehem. If we think of this as a dance, we would have the first part as a solo dance, and the whole chorus would dance to the Gloria in excelsis Deo. Shall we try to sing as if we are all having a joyous time singing and dancing?
The shepherds said to one another, "Let us go over to Bethlehem and see this thing that has happened, which the Lord has made known to us." And they went with haste and found Mary and Joseph and the babe lying in a manger. And when they saw it, they made known the thing which had been told them concerning this child. And all who heard it wondered at what the shepherds told them. But Mary kept all these things, pondering them in her heart. And the shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all they had heard and seen, as it had been told them.
This next carol, again, is a celebration of life, for joy is the theme of Christmas. And the carol is Joy to the World. The words were written by that great hymn writer, Isaac Watts. From the age of 7, he wrote poems and rebelled against the trashy hymns he was hearing in church in the late 1600s. As a result of an argument with his father, who said that if those hymns were good enough for his grandfather and for his father, he should like them. He said, if you can do better than that, you start writing your own hymns. So he did. The new one was so good that the father took it to church, and for 222 consecutive Sundays, he wrote a new hymn. This revolutionized the congregational singing of the English churches. While Watts was declining in health, he worked on the hymns based on the Psalms of David. He attempted to Christianize the Psalms with New Testament themes. Joy to the World is based on Psalm 98. It was set to music by Dr. Lowell Mason, who was so inspired by George Frederick Handel's Messiah that he borrowed some of his music for this carol. Let's stand and sing Joy to the World. final service of the semester, the term, will be Tuesday night, a Eucharist service at 9:30. Now may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift the light of his countenance upon you and give you peace. Go in peace. Serve the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Vineyard for many, many years. And I said, do you have a message for them? And he said, as a matter of fact, I have. He said, tell them it is easier for a priest and his wife to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich Lutheran pastor to enter heaven. So I just throw that out for what it's worth. Oh dear, I do sense a little bit of denial in this room. I like to clear things up quite fast, and if you don't mind, I have a little news article here. We all know that the separation is a part of life, isn't it? And there is a certain bereavement in the ALC departing, right? I just have to say here what Pastor Bishop Price said in the January 1st issue of the Star Tribune. He said he had a lively sense that the ALC is not just ending, it's being transferred. Now, really, you know that old sympathy card that said, she is not gone, she's just away? I think it would be quite healthy tonight if we say, and other people here who feel the way Pastor Bishop Price did, the ALC, Dr. Price, is not away, it's gone. You can put in your own syndicate, whatever you want to there, it's gone, whatever it is. So I think we all feel a little better, don't you? I do, don't you, Mr. Litt? He feels a lot better, I just do. Oh dear. Never let me miss the first snowfall. All I ask is this, call. Call me to the window, wake me if I sleep. Here is one excitement I must keep. Never let me lose the joy of knowing that winter is here, that it is snowing. I got that letter in the mail today, a little poem from an old LCA pastor who moved to Naples, Florida about 10 years ago. I haven't seen him since. Oh dear. Well, I think this is a wonderful time for all of you. Isn't it kind of a time of reunion? You see each other and talking and exchanging thoughts perhaps about your first job. Isn't that fun? I remember my first job. It was in 1946. And I went to Lindstrom, Minnesota as a social worker. I'll never forget my first client, just like you'll never forget your first parishioners, will you? I know that. The farmer came out of the barn, never forget it. And he said, you know, we've got a fresh cow here. Well, I'd grown up in the city, that was pretty new to me, but I knew, like you pastors all know, you must get with the feelings of the client, right? I said, boy, I said to that farmer, I know just how you feel. I had a boyfriend like that once myself. Well, I hope this isn't too much. Is it too much? See, I'm just simply trying to feel good about myself. And I know what you pastors have said over the years. I know it well. Your own mother has said it. In fact, you all say, feeling good about yourself comes from inside, don't you? Frankly, as I've grown older, I have found that diamonds, feathers, sequins, pearls, that's how I feel good about myself. I often said over the years, a woman without jewelry is like a night without stars. Isn't that what you say, madam, quite often? No, actually, I like to dress this way because I think this is how every woman sees herself in her inner heart. Ladies, Lutheran, on that day when you thought you were going to live happily ever after, remember that day? Remember at the altar you turned to him and you said, a wider world of hope and joy I see because you come to me? Remember that day? Isn't this more or less what you had in mind? I know I did. I was so romantic at the time. Actually, I could see it. The round table in the kitchen, a little wind blowing over the blue and white checkered tablecloth, the children seated around the table, matching knives and forks, the children saying grace and then exchanging pleasantries with each other. Oh dear, I don't know what happened to you. Oh dear. It's just wonderful to be making a comeback here at the Theological Seminary midwinter convocation. Really is. I haven't gone too far. Well, I should be a little more forthright with you, pastors. I think I almost went too far once. But Dr. Hoversten, it was way back in 1942. Hoversten here. I don't think that should count, do you? Because I want to explain the circumstances to you folks. See, it was during one of the wars. It was the Second World War. And I was young and inexperienced, like so many young girls today. And I had at the time a gentleman caller who asked if he could escort me to Atwater, Minnesota, for the purpose of enjoying a fish dinner. That's what he said. And we started out, and we almost went too far. I could tell he was one of our fighting men. But we almost went too far, but we got off the bus. Everything was okay. We almost got to Wilmer. Oh dear. I could just couldn't help notice what you were thinking, and I wasn't that kind of girl. Because I grew up in the Nelson Eddy, Jeanette MacDonald era. How many ladies here remember that era? Remember the theology of that time? Kind of the philosophy was one kiss, one man to save it for. Isn't that quaint? They even put it to music. One kiss, one man to save it for. Oh, dear, I don't want to make any of you older ladies here feel bad, but in light of the social changes, are you ever sorry? I mean, I'm not complaining or anything, but I read the other day, 2 billion people in the world. One kiss, one man. A person can't help but wonder sometimes, can you? Well, I don't know. I'm no theologian like Paul Gustafson at all, and I don't speak for the whole church body. It's my own body. I mean, I just speak but I have to say, back in those days, and as I say, this is not a statement for the church, but I simply think in those days, 'twas the fear of the Almighty that kept down the nighty. Well, perhaps we should move on to something a little more, shall we? A little more wholesome, right, Dr. T.D.? Yes. He's nodding, something more wholesome, yes. Oh, dear. Well, I'm a mother. I've raised 6 to maturity. Well, let's be honest, I've raised 6. And you know, I often said over the years, if you're not funny when you start, you get funny. Don't you? Mothers know that. That's the reason I came out of the broom closet about 1.5 years ago as a stand-up comedian. And I could see what some of you thought when I came in, and we can't help what we think, can we? Like Martin Luther said, the birds fly over your head, but they don't need to nest in your hair, do they? But anyway, I can see, don't feel bad what you thought. I could see your expression. I had the same thought myself. I thought at first, when I came out of the closet, I thought, perhaps you're too old for stand-up comedy. Then I kind of brightened up. I said, no, Reagan does it. Well, I see a lot of you caught his show, haven't you? Well, State of the Union, now that's funny, isn't it? State of the Union. Well, actually, when I decided to do this, I thought that I should talk it over with the family. That's how the Lutheran way, more or less, isn't it? Talk it over with the family. And so I went to my son, Rolf. Rolf is 22 years old. He's a senior at the University of Minnesota. Rolf is the last of 6. Yeah, the last one's gone. First one's back. And I said, Rolf, it's so boring at home. I said, it's so dull, there's no action, there's no loud music. I said, I think I will run on down to First Avenue and try out on the open stage. That was his reaction, Gracia. He said, Ma, now how many of you heard that sound? Call it the generation gasp, don't you? He says, Ma, that's where Prince went. I said, has that dog run away again? Boy, he got mad. He said, Ma, it's not our dog. He said, it's the entertainer. Well, you know, I said, Rolf, I'm not dumb. I read the Lutheran Standard. But I said, I'll tell you one thing, Rolf. He may be a good entertainer, but he's not a mother, and he never will be. Made Rolf pretty thoughtful, I can tell you that much. Speaking of adolescent, how many in this room, how many women have given birth to an adolescent? May I put it another way? How many in this room have a live adolescent in their home at the moment? If you have the strength, raise your hand, would you please? How many? Oh, listen, don't give up, madam, will you, back there? Don't give up. Because there comes that wonderful time in life that I like to think of as the role reversal. In fact, it happened to me today. I came out the door, and my son Rob came up to me, and he said, Ma, he says, you're not going out the door looking like that, are you? He says, your dress is so low and everything. I said, I'm going to tell you something, Rob. I am 63 years old. I drive a car. I have a valid driver's license. I earn money. And I can do anything I want to do. And you can't stop me. Oh, I tell you. It was a heady moment, ladies, I'll tell you that. So I just walked away from him, you know, walked off. Followed me right out to the car. You know how they do. Followed you right out. He said, Ma, Eric and I have been meaning to talk to you about something for a long time now. Eric's the older boy. He said, Eric and I are wondering if you're working up to your full capacity as a housekeeper. He said, you know we love you as a person. Ooh, don't you hate to hear that come back? But he said, we don't like what we see you doing. And he said, we honestly think by the time you're 63 years old that a nicely vacuumed rug, a well-served meal, and a clean toilet ought to mean something to you. You know, I walked right away from him, didn't say a word. He says, answer me. There was a wonderful moment. It was just great. Then he said, can I have the car? How many of you have heard that? Those are terrible words, aren't they? He says, can I have the car? I said, Rolf, why can't you walk to the North Pole like other young people in Minnesota are doing? No, he talked right back to me. He says, Ma, I don't want to walk to the North Pole. I said, Rolf, there are a lot of things in life we have to do that we don't want to do, right? Then I said, well, why do you need the car? I don't know if you people can believe this, but he said, Ma, well, this is how it is at the University of Minnesota. He said, Ma, I just met this girl. She's in mint condition. That's how they talk now, mint condition. He said, met her at the University of Minnesota weightlifting. Can you believe it? He said, Ma, this girl bench presses 125 pounds. Isn't that, are there weightlifters out there? That's kind of locker room talk. And, I have always tried to get linguistically with the child, get to their little level so you can communicate with their little minds. And I said, Rolf, I just tried to get down. I said, Rolf, boy, 125 pounds. I said, boy, I bet that really helps a young lady develop her jugs. He got mad. Got really mad. He said, Ma, it does help a young woman develop her pectoral muscle. That's what you're trying to say. He said, do you know, Ma, that she squats 100 pounds? Boy, I said, Rolf, when the time comes for her body to be used as a vessel for bearing children, that's really going to come in handy. He says, Ma, I just met her. I said, Rolf, a woman is never too prepared for that experience. That'll be right for you, won't it? You know that. Never too prepared. Well, anyway, I shouldn't be so hard on the boys, really. Because actually, they're both quite sensitive. Eric, the older boy, he's 26 years old, still in school. You know the type? He came to me the other day, and he said, Ma, I want you to know that it gets harder and harder every month for me to ask you for money. I said, Eric, I suppose you think it's easy for me to run to the Ebenezer home and ask Grandma for money every month. It's terrible. Well, we've tried, haven't all the Lutherans, we've tried to be good parents, and we're Lutheran, just like all 6 of the children were carefully reared in the Lutheran faith. I taught them Buddhism, just to be sure. But I want to be real open with you tonight, since I have so many pastors here. I'm into guilt. In fact, I'm rather heavily into it. And I've often said, if you're Scandinavian, Lutheran, and then a mother on top of it, it's a heavy load, isn't it, ladies? It's a heavy load, right? And I'll tell you the truth, there are a lot of times you don't even know what a heavy load you're carrying. You don't know until something happens that brings you right up short. And this happened to me just a couple of days ago. I was getting my driver's license renewed. Simple thing, right? And the man said to me, he says, Madam, where were you born? I said, I was born in iniquity, and in sin did my mother conceive me. Oh, I felt so bad after I said that. I mean, do you think I needed to give that much of my life to him? A simple public servant, do you share that much? All the way home, I thought, I wish I just said Duluth and let it go. Well, Dad and I tried so hard, really and truly to be good parents. I know all of you have out there. And I don't know, it just is something that it doesn't come too easy all the time. And I know that one of the things I like to think about a little bit that is somewhat helpful in this area, and that is the whole subject of romance. Because I happen to think that men in the Nelson Eddy age were more romantic. I see some over there. They spoke more romantically, don't you think? Their words were more romantic. Words are very potent things used by commoners and kings. Many varied roles they fill. They can serve or slay at will. Wives know that, don't we? Anyway, I have to say that some of you, you're probably looking up here like you, a young lady there, and you think, I bet nothing's ever happened to her, don't you? I have danced, flung roses wildly with the throng. I have. Actually, I had gentlemen callers before I was married. I really did. In fact, you'll just be amazed, ladies, what one of them said to me once. He said, Marilyn, meeting you is like finding strawberries in the snow. Oh. Ladies, I thought he was romantic, but I can hear Arndt Helvers, I really can't believe it. You ladies can say it, ooh, ooh. Actually, I would have crawled over a kitchen floor to cook for that man, wouldn't you? You know, it spoke so nicely. I had another caller too. My glasses still steam up when I think about him. Want to hear what he said? It's personal, but he said, "Out of the desert I come to thee, on a stallion, shod with fire." He was a farmer. "And the winds are left behind in the speed of my desire." Pretty heavy, right, Paul Swan? Yeah, pretty heavy. That remark was made in a 1936 Chevrolet I'd say about 4 miles west of Lindstrom. You know, my husband used to be a romantic before we were married. Any of you run into that situation, you ladies? In fact, one time he said to me, "Hail to thee, blithe spirit, bird thou never wert." You know, I'm romantic, but I didn't even know what to say back to him. I hate to tell you this, but he's kind of gone downhill a little bit, you know. And the other day, I thought I'd put a little of the magic back into the marriage. You know how you read about that in the books all the time. And so I should tell you before I go into that was while I was still working. I did resign my job, as Gracia said, at the university. I called the president, Ken Keller. You know, I said, "Ken," I said, "I've decided to give up my situation at the university. I want to be home with the children during their formative years." And I know what some of you young parents are thinking, but believe me, the formative years are 18 to 36. I mean, think what those young people have to decide. Will I work? Will I earn money? Will I leave home? Will I return home? Right? And finally, will I mate? And I just said I want to be with the boys during those decision-making times. But actually, when I was working, I went out the door that day to put a little of the magic back into the marriage, and I turned to my husband, and I said, "Einar." Actually, some of you know his name is Harold. But ladies, after 20, 30 years, change the name. You know, it's so much more romantic, really. I said, "Einar, watch for me by moonlight, wait for me by moonlight. I'll come to thee by moonlight, though hell should bar the way." He said, "Will you be home in time to cook supper?" I said, "Einar, my steps are nightly driven by the fever in my breast." And he said, "Well, I'll try to unthaw the meat before you get home." Well, I can tell you a wan cloud passed betwixt my love and thee at that point. I can tell you that much. Well, I don't like to say this in front of all these young pastors and their wives here, but the truth is sometimes after you've been married 20, 30, 40 years, sometimes doesn't it, well, I hate to say it, gets incredibly boring. I mean, Einar and I have discussed every single subject known to man. You know, we've talked about everything. In fact, we were sitting home last Saturday night. It was around 9 o'clock at night. And Einar turned to me and he uttered what I have come to believe is probably the most boring statement I have ever heard in my entire life. He said, "Dear, a girl who used to be in my confirmation class recently got a job with the telephone company." Isn't that a forehead-slapping remark? I can tell you, folks, I was desperate. I really was. I don't know, something just snapped in me, just came over me. I don't know what happened. I turned to him, and I said, "Roberto?" Why not, huh? Saturday night. And then I thought of a subject that we have never discussed, ever. I was so happy. We have never discussed this at all. And we have a mature audience here, don't we, Reverend Dr. David Teedy? It's mature. share it with you. I turned to him and I thought of this wonderful stuff. I said, Roberto, are piles and hemorrhoids the same medical condition? Or are they two separate conditions? And do you know that he brightened right up. He said he thought, I said, I've met it, I don't know it real well. And he said, oh, don't get so surly, I'm just trying to help you and tell you that it has split open. But he said, I think if you hold the split side close to your chest when you carry it out, everything will be okay. That's a good one. Close to your chest. You bishops can see I don't even have a chest, do I? No, I have a bosom. And when he was romantic, he used to say, hold the split side close to your bosom. You know, I almost didn't carry it out. In fact, I turned to him, I said, Roberto, why don't you carry it out? It's just one small step for mankind. Oh dear. Well, we try to make it romantic for the boys. Rolf came home when we had so much snow a few days ago. I was looking out in the window into the alley, saw my husband getting out of the car, and I said, Rolf, behold, my beloved cometh, springing over the mountains, dancing over the hills. Rolf says, Ma, Dad's got his foot caught in the snowdrift. He can't even move. I talked Lutheran to him. I said, Rolf, that life's all the way we look at it, isn't it? Isn't that right? So that makes you kind of thoughtful. I don't know. I suppose you've noticed the dress by now, haven't you? This is the national dress of Fridley, Minnesota. We're kind of ethnic up there. It's worn only by ladies over 62 when we do our tribal dances up and down 694. If you want to come up there and see us, you can. It's just really not too much. Suppose you've also noticed my eyes, right? You're so polite, you wouldn't say anything. Industrial strength. You know, I can share this with you. I've never seen the big E. No, actually, 62 years, the eye doctor says. Every year he says, Marilyn, can you see the big E? Have any of you seen it? Have you? Then it's a wonderful sight, isn't it? Well, sometimes actually, Lutherans believe a little handicap like that doesn't hurt. Does a little blindness in one eye, it strengthens your character, doesn't it? Isn't that what we believe as Lutherans? And it's helped me a lot in my driving. I drive very, very carefully, slowly. I think of 48 miles an hour on the freeway. You know, rev her up to 52 if you have to pass someone, right? And I'm careful. When I come to the entrance to a freeway, I always come to a complete stop. No, I look both ways, too. And people want to know what you're going to do on the road, don't they? So when I get to... I always put the blinker on about 8-10 blocks ahead, you know. How do you know where you're going to turn, huh? I'm really proud to stand before all you Lutherans and say 41 years of driving, I have never been in an accident. I've seen a lot of accidents. Well, but little fender benders around me, you know. Well, I did have... I tell you, I did have a rather unfortunate experience in the parking lot over at the seminary. Yesterday it was so cold, you know, and I tell you, I backed right up into Bishop Eitram's car. I felt so bad, ran right into the side of it, you know, and he got out. He was pretty mad, I'll tell you that. He said, what in the world? He said, what in the world do you think you're doing? He said, don't you look bad? I spoke Lutheran again to him. I said, I look not back. God knows the fruitless effort. Gave him something to think about, didn't it, for that morality issue that you were talking about yesterday. I really got him thinking. I think those little life events help, don't you? They do. They make it much better for you. Well, I tell you folks, the time is moving on here, and you know, I do like to kind of close on a more serious note, and I think as I look over this marvelous audience, I'd just like to ask you now for just one brief minute, if you would close your eyes. After all, bow your heads, please. Don't look at each other, please. This is between you and your district president. If you would please do that, just close your eyes and bow your head. I'm not going to look at you right now. And if in your hearts you want to be a better pastor, that you want to put aside all the evil thoughts of wishing that you had been bishop, wishing that you could be a district president, if you want to put those away, if you want to put away the thoughts that you wish you had both Sunday and Monday off, or that you could go to the church triumphant to possibly get a call to a nice suburb in Chicago. I always thought the church triumphant was in that kind of a setting. If in your hearts you honestly are not lusting after a little higher salary or a little increase in your mileage, if you'd like to come forward, now don't look at each, just come forward. We'll have a small little altar call. I'm going to look in a minute. Well, I guess that says it, David TD, it's not, no one's coming forth, but anyway, we'll just move on. And I think that I would like to close for my part on some serious words that my Swedish mother taught me years and years ago. She said, Marilyn, be strong. We are not here to play, to dream, to drift. We have work to do and loads to lift. Shun not the struggle. Face it, 'tis God's gift. I can't tell you how I hate that poem.